Hey everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about two special events that are related to every possible experiment. These are called the impossible and certain events. And I may have mentioned these before, but let's recall what is an event associated to an experiment. Well, so the answer is it's a subset of the sample space. In other words, it's some collection of possible outcomes of the experiment. And as we've seen, there's more than one way to describe an event. So to describe the same event in words. So for example, so say our experiment is you roll a six-sided die. The sample space is just the numbers 1 through 6. And so one event is you roll a 3 or a 6. And another event that I'll call F is you roll a number divisible by 3. And so one way to determine what subset an event corresponds to is to just go through everything in the sample space and see, does this satisfy this event? And so let's go for E. Whoops. For E, you roll a 3 or a 6. Well, is 1 a 3 or a 6? No, so I don't include it in E. 2 is not a 3 or a 6, so I don't include it in E. 3 is a 3 or a 6, so I include it in E. 4 is not a 3 or a 6, so I don't include it. 5 is not a 3 or a 6, so I don't include it. 6 is a 3 or a 6, so I do include it. Now I do the same thing for F. A number divisible by 3. 1 is not divisible by 3, so I don't include it. 2 is not divisible by 3. 3 is divisible by 3. 4 is not divisible by 3. 5 is not divisible by 3, but 6 is divisible by 3. And so both of these are the same event, but I've phrased them two different ways. Or I phrased it two different ways. They are the same subset of the sample space, and so they're the same event. Keep that in mind for later. Okay, and so what if I have an event? So for the same example, so what if my event, oops, is something like H? So your event is roll a number less than 10. Okay, so what subset does this correspond to? Well, let's go through. 1 is less than 10, so I'll include it in H. 2 is less than 10, so I'll include it in H. 3 is less than 10, so I'll include it in H. 4 is less than 10, so I'll include it in H. 5 is less than 10, so I'm including H, and 6 is less than 10, so I include it in H. So H is just the same as a set, it's the same as our sample space, because every possible number is less than 10. And so if we look at the probability of H, the classical probability, this is the size of H divided by the size of S. Well, the size of H is 6, the size of S is 6, so that's 6 over 6, so that's 1, or as a percentage, 100%. Okay, and so an event, so an event is just a subset, or sorry, an event is a subset of the sample space. But the entire sample space, is also considered a subset. And so all this to say is an event that corresponds to the entire sample space is called the certain event. And the reason it's called the certain event is because its probability is 1 or 100%. Okay, and so no matter what happens, one of these will always be satisfied. Your event is always satisfied. Now, for the same experiment, let's use a different example. Let's say our event E is roll a number greater than 10. And so let's see what subset we correspond to. So let's look at our sample space, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then for each of these, we say, is it greater than 10? And if it is, we'll include it in our event. 1 is not greater than 10, so we don't include it. 2 is not greater than 10, so we don't include it. 3 is not greater than 10, so we don't include it. 4, 5, and 6, none of these are greater than 10. And so our subset, E, there's nothing in it. And so E, this set, so this is called the empty set and has nothing in it. Because no possible outcome in our experiment satisfies roll a number greater than 10. And so all for your event, it's all coming from your sample space. You're looking at what are the possibilities of this experiment, and I'm going to take some of those. But maybe I don't take any. So it's called the empty set and has nothing in it. And so the empty set is also considered a subset of any sample space. And so what's the probability of this event occurring? Well, you might say it's impossible, right? If I'm rolling a 6-sided die with numbers 1 through 6, it is impossible for me to roll a number greater than 10. Well, it's going to be the size of E over the size of S. The size of E, well, there's nothing in E. There are 0 things in E. So its size is 0. Size of S is 6. 0 over 6 is 0 or 0%. And so an event that doesn't contain anything and so i.e. it is the empty set, is called the impossible event. And it's called the impossible event because its probability is always 0. Okay, and so it will come in handy to have these events on hand. So the impossible event corresponds to so I will say certain event it corresponds, so event corresponding to the entire sample space S, and probability of 1 or 100%. And the impossible event is the event corresponding to the empty set, so the empty subset of S, and it has a probability of 0 or 0%. Okay, so again, these will come in handy later, but it's good to introduce them now, and hopefully you have a pretty good feel for them. But that's all for this video.